What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch, and I'm pleased to bring you some pro analysis of Doomfist. Plays that the pros have made that have taught us and the rest of the community, as well as the pro scene, do's and don'ts, rules about the Doomfist meta that we can establish here and now. The truth is, when a big patch comes in to utterly change the game of Overwatch in a major way, it takes some time to realize what the new state of play is. It isn't the case where everything gets changed and then every player automatically knows what the best strategies are. In the dive meta patch that we just left, a lot of pro teams for quite a while actually held on to the assumption that a character like Reinhardt was still a must pick, and it wasn't until multiple play sessions and attempts to play Reinhardt against enemies who were playing Tracer, farming pulse bomb with no counter in sight, getting free team fights by sticking pulses to the Reinhardt, and eventually, through that process, it was deemed that dive tanks were the way to go on both attack and defense. Similar rules like that are what we're establishing now with the Doomfist meta. Assumptions and theory crafting are nice when someone like me can sit at the comfort of my own desk and come up with these ideas without actually having to play, but it's up to the pros to put their neck on the line to determine how these things pan out. They're learning the game just like the rest of us, and many of these teams probably have already learned these lessons that I'm going to be breaking down here today from the past few weeks of competitive play between Overwatch contenders and Apex. So, even though I'm sure there's plenty more to learn, I think there are some things that we definitely know now on the Doomfist meta that I'm going to break down through examples of pro play. The first thing we're going to jump right into is talking about some harsh lessons that befell some of the best teams in competitive Overwatch. Both Lunatic High and Immortals seem to not really adapt immediately to the Doomfist meta. And a major problem that both of these teams faced is that they didn't have a hero on their team that could straight up face-to-face duel the Doomfist. In this meta, and even in the last, I would say, DPS characters won out fights. If you didn't have a good answer for the enemy team's DPS, trading out efficiently isn't even really good enough, because if the fight ends up in like a 3v3 situation and their DPS is still alive, they're gonna carry out the end of the fights every time. This is something that you see when you have Tracer and Sombra as the DPSs for Lunatic High against Pharah and Doomfist for MVP space. The problem is that a good Doomfist isn't going to lend himself open to be able to be hacked before he gets his abilities off. If you hack him after he gets his abilities off, they were going on cooldown anyway. And even if you do end up killing him, he probably has already killed a teammate of yours. The key to winning any team fight in Overwatch is always target prioritization. What is the biggest threat? Well, if Doomfist is out on the field, you have to counter him. He's too sharp of a hero to go ignored. And another problem that I don't think enough players have really realized is that even if you kill Doomfist in the mid-fight, he has one of the best run-back times of any character as well. So the old rules of being able to just trade out isn't really good enough, because as this fight brawls out for Lunatic High, MVP's Space 1 fact is able to come back to the fight far too quickly, and Lunatic High really fail to close out the engagement fully. This dive comp with Sombra that they have simply can't defend their backline. All this mobility worked really well in last meta, where you could razzle-dazzle your way around every engagement, but now mobility's not going to be good enough, you need firepower. I believe we will start to see triple tank return as a reliable answer to Doomfist, as it's pretty easy to, in a boxing term, have the Doomfist punch himself out as he expends far too many of his resources to just barely kill a tank. Although he can crowd control tanks, he just can't kill them nearly as quickly and efficiently as he can squishies, and if you run squishies, you have to make sure that they're the right ones that can deal with Doomfist directly. Tracer, Sombra, and Soldier all kind of have to avoid the fight. They can't take fights head on. That's not what their characters are built to do. Doomfist is the exact opposite. Any character that's afraid of taking a fight head on, he comes at it with a big smile on his face. And I would go as far to say that at least on maps that are small enough for Doomfist to work in, he hard counters all three of them, and only starts to look not as good against Tracer on maps where she has the mobility to be able to dodge his punches. But, as we're going to see, it isn't just the punch that's a problem. Really good Doomfists are capable of hitting all of his abilities. And that close range Tracer, who's used to being able to have her way with characters at close range, find herself susceptible to all of Doomfist's abilities, including his underrated hand cannon, which depending on how the spread hits, and how many headshots land, can kill Tracer in about 2 to 3 shots, which rivals her best DPS against him. When you're in this close of range, the matchup just doesn't look good. And further, there's even better examples of the Sombra looking really impotent against the Doomfist. As Sombra tries to do the footsie battle to get an angle on him, well, he just has his way with their back line. I would say it could be possible if Sombra doesn't flank here and instead defends the back line that she might see more success, but who's to say the one-hit kills don't land on her instead of her friendly Zenyatta in that case? Not to mention on the next team fight, when Eska has EMP yet again, because Doomfist doesn't have to be actively in the fight until he needs to be, he can stay outside of the range of EMP until they initiate, and then pop out on a moment's notice to insta-kill the Sombra in a way that she couldn't see coming. This ended up being the entire narrative of the MVP Space Lunatic High match, as they were set up to actually win the series, but in my opinion, just through team comp alone, weren't able to close out the last tick on Hollywood, because bar landing some miracle shots, nobody can actually stop the Doomfist from imposing his will onto the team. And as the fight drags out, eventually the Pharah rockets and the rocket punches are going to find their mark. So at the end of the day, it becomes abundantly obvious to me that if your composition is too shake and bake or has too much sustained damage, you're just not going to have an answer that's fast enough to be able to deal with the Doomfist. Now this lesson is going to ring true yet again when we see the Immortals and Envious matchup, who actually play Doomfist in a different way, but utterly dismantle the tried and true dive comp that defined the meta of old. What the Envious Immortals matchup showed us is how a character like Doomfist can completely change what is the strongest feature of the game right now. The Doomfist threat is strong enough against mobility to the point where a character like McCree has infinitely more space than he used to last meta. It used to be the case that there was so much mobility active in the game and there wasn't enough crowd control for McCree to be able to stabilize that he basically was a free kill if you just threw enough mobility at it. Well now, with Doomfist ever present in the team fight, a character like McCree can be propped up and always defended against some of those threats. Envious very easily wins these fights because the enemy team Immortals has to sort of scurry around and flank and dance basically in order to avoid the damage, while Envious can simply land shots. What a dive comp team needs is for the team fight to be over quickly. Well, with the threat of Effects Doomfist ever present, you can't just simply jump onto anything because one poor mistake means the entire team fight's going to be lost. This allows for Envious to have very structured engagements, that they win the poke wars of attrition almost by default because their range damage is stronger. No longer is it the case that mobility defeats McCree, because now there's enough crowd control threats to deny the space that the mobility characters used to be able to take. That's what creating space looks like. I don't even necessarily think the flanker characters of Immortals played badly in this series. They did well for the most part to avoid the punch of Doomfist, but it was the mere fact that they had to respect it that allowed Taimu to land tons of range damage that won most fights handily. McCree doesn't have to razzle-dazzle in order to find damage, he just stands in a good spot and deals damage from range. And he too, like Doomfist, is a sharp character, very exploitable by number of things, but if you prop him up, you can win triumphantly. And here at the last fight to close out the map, although Agilities gets a team wipe with Sword at the end of it, he gets shut down by Doomfist. No longer is Genji the biggest boy on the block. At any point, Doomfist is happy to tussle with a Genji. And that staggered death on their star player puts Immortals on the back foot against the oncoming retake, and the same process of Envious being able to confidently take space, in this case the objective, the important space, and just land shots comfortably with not really any threat onto them. What do? Do you send your entire team to dive on the McCree? If you don't kill the Doomfist, he's going to carry the rest of the fight. So you dive onto him, well McCree's going to land a stun on you and insta-kill someone else, and carry for the same reasons. This structured death ball with Doomfist and McCree is incredibly stable, and as far as I'm concerned, is a hard counter to dive comp. I think dive comp can still be useful, but mobility is just nowhere near the easiest path to victory. Now, instead, crowd control is. This next map on Numbani, Effect catches the dive, which is a concept that has been key to the dive meta for a long time, being able to catch the dive effectively. He catches the Winston with a warm embrace of a cold fist. and he just gets deleted every time that he's out of sync. The speed of that burst damage in crowd control is so significant that it doesn't buy really any time for your flankers to get going. But well played by Envious. I think they are the best team at NA contenders. I would say they're going to win the whole thing. But moving on to the team that I think is going to take the EU side of contenders, Misfits, they also seem very adept at being able to create these structured ranged engagements as well. They control this center ground of Lijiang Control Center like it's their house. And surprising enough, the range damage of Doomfist can't be ignored. It isn't great by any means, but it does outweigh Tracer and Sombra. And although Genji's damage might have a higher skill cap and a higher potential, Doomfist's spread is actually more reliable. And as soon as Tavik lands a chunky left click onto the enemy Tracer and she has to back out, well, it's like playing whack-a-mole on these dive characters, and Misfits easily can turn their attention onto the Sombra, and that's the effect that these crowd control abilities and ranged poke can have. You aren't going to win by merely having more characters in the midst of the fight. You can't. Unless the dive characters just overcommit and probably die, sacrificing themselves to be able to at least get those trades going, the dive comp's going to look useless against this kind of comp. And here on Eichenwald, Misfits creates some beautiful engagements against Cloud9, who also, of course, are running the dive comp. Pay close attention to how Misfits utilizes Manatine's defense matrix. As the engagement comes in, they're able to pivot around on the defense matrix and keep 3 players safe within it. That's the benefit of playing the Deathball style in this. I know they don't have Deathball tanks necessarily, but just as a Rhine shield would stand there to hold the engagement, the ranged characters of the supports and soldier are allowed to stay safe behind the tanking. And with no opening, what else do you go do? Go fight the Doomfist, who's gonna one-shot kill you anyway? Beautiful engagement by Misfits, and they do it again later on Eichenwald defense with a perfect ult fight position, point presence on the ground, and their soldier up high. Genji can't get to the soldier fast enough to be able to avoid the brawling capabilities of Doomfist on the ground. And Trance can't save you from the Doomfist one-shot kill, and Cloud9's usage of both support ults trades out, which isn't what you want on attack. So where do we go from here? I hope this video's made its point that the Doomfist presence is able to prop up team comps that you thought weren't good enough before, and is really going to expand and open up the meta in ways that we're not even seeing yet. This is only step 1 towards that process. A team like Lunatic High, who had a tragic defeat against Doomfist in their previous match, in their most recent match against Runaway, looked completely prepared for the Doomfist. On Village, they were sure to fight in the open ground where Doomfist is weak with a pharmacy overhead. And who's the first character to die? The biggest threat. Doomfist goes down, the entire enemy team crumbles, which ended up forcing into a counterpick game between the two teams that Lunatic High eventually won. The other option, of course, is to play Doomfist yourself, which many teams are attempting to do, and this is going to be the norm, I think, until more teams realize the strats that they can run that are powerful against the Doomfist comp without having to mirror it. A lot of the things that I broke down in today's video, if you've watched previous ones on Doomfist, you would know are things that I said and predicted when Doomfist came out. So now for my next bold prediction is that we're going to start to see other characters that can deny the Doomfist style dive comp to reveal its weakness, because just popping Doomfist into a dive comp might look strong until the enemies start to counter it. So we'll start to see Roadhog, Junkrat, McCree have much more of a big space in the meta, because if you try to just throw the dive tanks with Doomfist at those characters, they kind of can catch the dive even better. Doomfist himself is good at catching dive, and eventually there will be a back and forth between the meta where the team comps will slow down and it'll start to pan out to be more poke engagement rather than dive engagement, with a much more heavy emphasis on ultimate fights, which is as we predicted it in our Season 6 meta discussion video. When pro teams realize how easy it is to catch a Doomfist who's extending into your backline, keeping in mind that dive comp does the opposite of that, right? It abandons the backline to dive the enemies. That's when the game will slow down again. But you'll still see Doomfist get in those aggro plays, especially when we're in the ult fights, because that's where his ult and Graviton Surge start to look really strong. Both of them are good at initiating fights, and as teams are going to be forced to play more in a set engagement, controlling space style, it'll be expected that you'll need those ultimates in order to break those entrenched setups. I'm really surprised that pro teams haven't even tried the new and improved Orisa, who's now good against Pharah and Doomfist to a significant degree. And once you are able to put her in some of these engagements where you're holding space, you no longer will need the dive tanks. Like, what's the point of these teams running these dive tanks if most of the time they're going to be standing around waiting to catch the enemy dive? Even better would be the step further is just putting the Orisa there to do the same thing, but also be able to contribute to the ranged battle, amplifying the effect of the ranged dominance that these team comps with Doomfist keeping them upright will have. Really exciting stuff in the meta right now, guys. And I know this one was quite deep and dense, not as much slow motion in this pro breakdown, so this one might be the type of video that you want to rewatch if anything flew past you too fast, and if it did, leave me a comment down below to slow it down again, and I can try to take things a bit slower next time around. Of course, these pro breakdowns take a massive amount of work, especially considering we don't have a VOD system. I have to cherry pick the best camera angles among just finding or learning what's going on in the game to begin with. And if you appreciate the work that we put into these videos, I hope you leave us a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. It keeps me motivated to keep putting in the extremely long hours that it takes to put together a video like this. So if you did enjoy, please leave a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day, so you're gonna wanna hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description, you can check out our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes, as well as my occasional rant about the metagame. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.